I'm resuming the recording. Yeah, no. Yeah, Gangadhar also joined.
All right.
Yeah. Namaste everyone. Today is Natural Equilibrium Group 42nd webinar. And the topic we are just going to discuss today is elaborated discussion on Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, series 3. We already covered 2 sessions on the same topic. And we are going through the verses and what is the deep meaning of that and what is the presenter experiences in that. And then we are taking the question and answers. So today is the series 3. Yeah, Vikramji, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Sudhir, for inviting me once again. We have with us Gangadhar Garu, whose son is going to recite a few verses. So I'm going to ask him to recite starting from verse number 7, which is Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke. If he can sing until Yadadityagatam Tejo. Don't sing Yadadityagatam Tejo. Before that, you stop. So if you can do the next 4 or 5 verses, will be great. Can you do that, please?
I'm ready.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
Rajo ragatmakam vidhi trishna sanga samudbhavam.
Hold on. Pause, please. We are in chapter 15. We are in chapter 15, verse 7. All right.
Yeah.
Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke.
ममैवांशो जीवलोके जीवभूतः सनातनः मनःषष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात् श्रोत्रं चक्षुस्पर्शनं च रसनं घ्राणमेव च अधिष्ठाय मनश्चायं विषयानुपसेवते उत्क्रामन्तं स्थितं वापि भुञ्जानं वा गुणान्वितं विमूढनानुपश्यन्ति पश्यन्ति ज्ञानचक्षुषः यतन्तो योगिनश्चैनं पश्यन्त्यात्मन्यवस्थितं यतन्तो प्रकृतात्मानः नैनं पश्यन्त्यचेतसः यदादित्यगतं तेजः जगद्भासयतेऽखिलं यच्चन्द्रमसि यच्चाग्नौ तत्तेजो विद्धि मामकम्.
That's fine. I think we can stop here. Let me speak about the verses we have spoken so far, and then you can start with this verse again once I finish talking. Would that be okay?
Yes.
So what I will do now is I will share my screen, and let's look at this Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke. We actually started speaking about this last time, and there was one request that we were going a bit too slow, but then several people called me thereafter and they said, no, we are going at the right pace and we should just go over these things in as much detail as we can so that we can understand this properly, of course. So therefore my apologies to people who already understand this and know this subject quite well. So they may bear with me, but for those who would like to understand this topic in a bit more detail, who are not familiar with it, for them, I think it will be good if we go a bit slowly. So we had talked about Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manashashtan Indriyani Prakritisthani Karshati. This is what we had studied last time, right? So how did we get here? Initially, we talked about the first 5 verses or 6 verses were regarding what is the nature of the world and what is the sadhana to be able to understand what the nature of the world is. So we understood that the world was described as Urdhva Moolam Madhashakham, which means that it is like an inverted tree. The example given was only for the purpose of telling us that the world appears to be not what it is. All right. So in a sense, this world appears to be real, but it is actually an illusion. What is that illusion? The illusion is how we look at it. Okay. The example we had given was a mirror image. So when we look at the mirror image, is the mirror image real? The mirror image is dependent upon us being there and the mirror being there. All right. So when the mirror is there, we are there, then the image in the mirror will appear. Once we are not there, the mirror image will also disappear, is it not? So this experience we get every night when we go to sleep, when we are in deep sleep. In the deep sleep experience, we have no awareness of the world. We have no awareness of our own body. We have no awareness of who we are. All right. So all of these things disappear. So whatever we understand, whatever we know during our waking experience, that entire experience disappears when we are in deep sleep, right? So we learned that the world is essentially an illusion. Then to understand it in this manner, we learned 5 different sadhanas: nirmana moha, jitasanga dosha, adhyatma nitya, vinivritta kamaha, dvandvair vimuktaha, sukha dukkha saunyahi. So these things if we do, then we understand the nature of the world as it is, as an illusion. So therefore what do? We of course stay in the world. We do what is required in the world. We do all of our duties. We enjoy the world, but we don't get attached to it. All right. So once we have understood this, and even then, see, during one of the webinars, we talked about the avatars, right? So initially we are extremely attached to our body and we think we are the body, right? So this is our material existence. During that existence, we are trying to fulfill all of our bodily desires, pleasures, and all those things. But after some time, we realize that this is not it, because all these physical pleasures will last only for a very short time. Thereafter, we start wondering, how is all this thing coming together, and who is the one who is enjoying this world? And then we start thinking, or we start assuming that we are a jiva. All right, we are a jiva means we are an individual soul. So once we come up to that consciousness, then the Lord is telling us this: Mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashashtani indriyani prakritisthani karshati. An eternal portion of myself, having become a living soul in the world of life, abiding in Prakriti, draws to itself the 5 senses with the mind for the 6th. This is the literal translation of this verse. All right. So this is taken as, I will tell you how people take it as. People take it as there is one soul per body. Okay. But that is not true. See, how can you divide the infinite? I told you last time also, the eternal principle is infinite. How can you divide the infinite? So imagine sky as the infinite, right? Or the space as infinite. Now in that space, we talk about east, west, north, south, and then northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest, right? See these 8 directions all around us, and then up and down. So 10 directions total. Are these 10 directions real? Can you really divide the space into 10 directions? Space is infinite. Each direction is also infinite, is it not? So if you divide the infinite into different parts, each part itself is infinite. Therefore, each one of us, if we consider ourselves to be an individual soul, that individual soul will also need to be infinite, is it not? Most of us, and how do you relate one infinite with another infinite? So each one of you, say, if we say that you are an individual soul, right? And each one of you is infinite, and I'm also infinite. So is there any difference between infinite and infinite? Infinite cannot be divided. All right, so that is the real understanding. Yes, the infinite will appear to be finite because I have assumed it to be finite. Okay, so that is my assumption, that I'm this body or I'm this soul. But that is not the truth. So then what's the next verse the Lord says? He says, Mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashashtani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. Then shariram yadavapnoti yachapyutkramati ishvaraha gruhitvaitani sanyati vayurgandhani vashayat. All right, so when the Lord obtains a body and when he leaves it, he takes these and goes with them as the wind takes the scents from their seeds. So see, the body is going to remain here. Okay, when we leave this body, when the time comes, then the body remains here, right? And this body will get, depending upon our faith, it will either get burned or buried or whatever, right? But the software that comes with the body, which is the sense organs and the mind, indriyas they call it. Sense organs, as we understand them, they are connected with the body, right? But the subtle sense organs are connected with the subtle body, right? So that subtle body and the mind, that leaves, right? We say that somebody has died means his prana has gone, all right? So when he leaves it, that software basically goes with it. So it's like our software in our device, we save it in the cloud, and then when we take another device, we download it from the same cloud, right? So all of our previous data, contacts, passwords, everything can be downloaded onto the next device. So that is exactly what, you know, happens when we leave this body and take another body, all right? Shrotram chakshusparshanam cha rasanam ghranam cha adhishtaya manaschayam vishayanupasevate. So presiding over the ear, the eye, the touch, the taste, and the smell, so also the mind, he enjoys the sense objects. So this so-called soul, okay, gets infatuated with, attached to, and craves for all the vishayas. Vishayas means sense objects. So sense objects here means vishaya. So this soul gets attached to, attracted towards these vishayas or the sense objects, and then starts enjoying them because he thinks that these objects are real, because he gets pleasure by enjoying them. All right. So this is our experience, is it not? So then what happens? Utkramantam sthitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimudhananu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. Right? So him who departs, stays and enjoys, who is united with the gunas, the deluded do not see, but they behold who possess the eye of knowledge. All right. So we have told the story, or the Lord has told the story of the jiva or the soul. All right. Utkramantam means he who departs. Sthitam means stays. Vapi bhunjanam means enjoys. Okay. Va gunanvitam. Gunanvitam means he enjoys with the gunas. Gunas, we have talked about sattva guna, rajo guna, and tamo guna in the past, right? So under the influence of these three gunas, the individual soul will enjoy the world. All right. Now this is the entire story told about the jiva. But then the Lord says, Vimudha nanu pashyanti. So the person who is Vimudha means somebody who is deluded. Deluded means what? I have assumed something to be true which is not true. That is called delusion. All right. So what is our fundamental delusion? Our fundamental delusion, which was Arjuna's delusion. It is my delusion. It is everybody else's delusion. Our delusion is I am this body. You know, when we think of something as myself, which is not myself, then this moha or this misunderstanding is called maya. All right. So I consider myself to be the body. Then what do I do under the influence of maya, or what will the maya do? Maya will set up her own statues. Okay. And then she will herself garland those statues. Okay. And have a big celebration. That is the ultimate or the extreme case of body identification, that I'm this body. So all of us are in this delusion that I'm this body. This is called maya. And then this body is not really mine, right? See, this body was created from the elements. This body was created from all the food we ate, you know, little by little, molecule by molecule. Initially, our body was only this much. Then it grew to so much, whatever it is right now. How did this happen? It happened because we ate all the food and this food got converted into this body. That is why this body is called the Annamaya Kosha. All right. This entire material with which we have constructed this body has always been on this planet. All we have done is picked up piece by piece and then put that together, isn't it? So this is not really mine. You see, I'm wearing this t-shirt. this t-shirt, I bought it from the store, right? Now I can say that this t-shirt, I'm using it right now. This t-shirt is mine, but the t-shirt is not me. So therefore, as I said, even this body I have picked up from the earth. So I'm using this for the time being. The planet has given it to me for using. It belongs to the planet. I'm going to leave it when I leave this body, isn't it? So what is not me, if I start considering that as me, it's called Maya. And what is not mine, when I start considering that to be mine, then that is called Mamata. All right. So as long as this Maya and Mamata are in our life, which means in our head, there is no freedom. So what is not mine, I should not crave it. As the Ishavasya Upanishad says, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat yena tyaktena bhunjitha magrudak kasyas vidhanam. So everything here in this universe is Ishavasya, means it is pervaded by the divine. Yatkincha jagatyam jagat, even the tiniest thing in this world or in this universe is basically a manifestation of the same divine principle. All right, so what is mine? Nothing is mine. So tena taktena bhunjitha magrudak kasyas vidhanam. So I cannot really covet what is not mine. That is what it says. Even if we remember this one shlok from the Upanishads, that itself is sufficient for us to completely lose all craving and all attachment to the material world. All right. So the people who do not understand this in this manner are called Vimudha. Vimudha nanu pashyanti, they don't understand it or they don't see it in this manner. But the ones whose eye of wisdom, jnana chakshusha means eye of wisdom or eye of knowledge is opened up, the third eye. If that is opened up, then they will see it the way it is. All right. So that is the nature of the world and the jiva. All right. Yatanto yoginaschainam pashyantyatmanyavasthitam yatanto pyakrutatmano nainam pashyantya chetasaha. So the seekers who are striving for perfection behold him dwelling in the self, but the unrefined and the unintelligent, even though striving, see him not. Pashyanti atmani eva avasthitam. So the one who is purified in his mind through sadhana, that person will see that as a part of himself. That person will see this entire world as himself. That person will see this jiva as himself. That person will see all the jivas as himself. He will not see all the jivas as separate from each other. Okay. So there is a fundamental oneness in this entire universe, and we can feel that or we can understand that as Atmani eva avasthitam. So it is all within me. This is the kind of understanding Vedanta will give us. Even though we may not have that experience, why not start with the assumption that this is true? See, if we look at the scriptures or if we look at the Gita from a skeptical point of view, we will never understand the Gita. All right. The Gita was told by Krishna to Arjuna. All right. If we assume that this is divine knowledge that has been given to the seeker without any kind of selfish interest. See, I often tell people, who should you listen to or who should we listen to? Who should I listen to? I should listen to somebody who has, number one, experienced whatever he's telling me by himself. So the teacher has to have first-hand experience of whatever the teacher is teaching. Then the second thing is the teacher should have my well-being at his heart. So the teacher should genuinely feel that I should be benefited by that. And thirdly, the teacher should not seek anything in return. So if these three things are satisfied, then I should listen to that teacher with great reverence, and I should assume whatever he is telling is true, even though I may not have experienced it. And then I should try to see what I can do to try to experience it. If we learn the Gita with this kind of reverence, with this kind of Shraddha, then we will understand the Gita. Then we will understand the Gita, Pashyanti Atmani Eva Avasthitam. Right? Then we will understand this whole thing as a part of myself. All right. Now, let's go back to Gangadhar Garu. Let's do from Yadaditya Gatam Tejo until the 15th one. Go ahead. Can you do that, please? Gangadhar Garu, can you unmute yourself? Sudhir, can you unmute Gangadhar Garu so that his son can recite the verses after this? All right, go ahead. You are unmuted. Can you see? Yadaditya Gatam Tejo.
यदादित्यगतं तेजो
Jagadbhasayate khilam.
जगद्भासयतेऽखिलं यच्चन्द्रमसि यच्चाग्नौ तत्तेजो विद्धि मामकं गामाविश्य च भूतानि धारयाम्यह मोजसा पुष्णामि चौषधिः सर्वाः सोमो भूत्वा रसात्मकः अहं वैश्वानरो भूत्वा प्राणिनां स्तेहमाश्रितः प्राणापानसमायुक्तः पचाम्यन्नं चतुर्विधं सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टः मत्तस्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यः वेदान्तकृत् वेदविदेव चाहम्.
Okay, that's fine. So we'll stop here now. We'll go over these verses now and I'll try to explain what I understand from these verses. All right. So far the Lord has told us about the word, then he told us about the Jiva. These were both stories. Unless we understand these stories from Atmani Eva Avasthitam within ourselves as an experience, these stories will remain stories. Now, Sudhir, can you mute Gangadhar Garu, please? So, then the Lord tells us about what we understand as Ishvara. All right. So here he will talk about the Ishvara concept. He says, Yadadityagatam tejo jagad bhasayate khilam yat chandramasi yachagnav tat tejo vidhi mamakam. So that light which is residing in the sun and which illumines the whole world, and that which is in the moon and in the fire, know that light to be mine. Okay. Tat tejo means the teja means the effulgence or the light or the brightness in these three things is mine. So initially he talks about, see, we all are basically driven by the sun. So everything on the earth is because of solar power. So photosynthesis happens by solar power. So inorganic matter is converted into organic matter. Okay, it is converted into life. So the plants, through the process of photosynthesis, will collect carbon dioxide from the air, water, and through sunlight, carbon dioxide and water will combine to become glucose. That is the first fundamental biochemical reaction on this planet. That is the food for all other living entities thereafter. So plants will use that, we will use that, and then the biochemical cycles on this planet will go on. But they are driven by the solar power. So that's why the power in the sun or the light in the sun or the teja in the sun is my teja. All right. Okay, but the sun is too far away or it's too hot. Then the Lord says, okay, fine. The sun is too far away. Here it is. The teja or the coolness of the moon is also me. Okay. But then, moon is also too far away. It's not easily accessible. So then what? Okay. The fire in your kitchen, or, if you smoke, then in your lighter, all that is also my own nature, or the brightness is because of me. That's what the Lord is saying. Okay. Yadadityagatam tejo jagad bhasayate khilam yat chandramasi yachagnav tat tejo vidhi mamakam. Know that light to be mine. Okay. Then he says, okay, Gama Vishyacha Bhutani Dharayamya Mojasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva Somo Bhutva Rasatmakaha. So, permeating the earth, I support all beings by my energy, and having become the liquid moon is actually Soma Rasa, which is the principle that nourishes all the herbs and all of us also through that. All right. So I do Pushnami Chaushadhi means, Chaushadhi here means Vanaspati, or the things that we use as food. So food is described as Aushadhi or medicine. In fact, I had spoken about this in one of my earlier webinars. If we consider our food as medicine and consume it as medicine, then the food will nourish us and build our body and our mind in such a phenomenal way, we will not be able to imagine how wonderful it feels. See, this experience I've myself had, and that's why I'm sharing this personal experience with you, that this energy of the sun comes to the earth. Gama Vishyacha Bhutani. Gam Avisha. Gam means the earth. Avisha means I come. Bhutani means it, all these jivas, or all these souls, or all these different manifestations of life. So life is basically nourished by the energy of the sun as it comes down to the earth. It creates all the, Chaushadhi means all the things we eat, Vanaspati. Sarva Somo Bhutva Rasatmaka. So the energy of, or the prana shakti of the food we eat, that is what permeates into our body, our mind, and nourishes us. That is how we get built, right? So this is what he says. So initially he says, okay, the power of the sun, the moon, the Agni, and then coming down to the earth, the power I gave to the Vanaspati or the food, and that nourishes us. That is what it means. So that is what the nature of the Ishvara is. All right. Then he says, okay, Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritaha Pranapana Samayuktaha Pachamyannam Chaturvidam. All right. So I, having become the fire, Vaishvanara, it's actually the digestive fire. All right. Vaishvanara means digestive fire. Abide in the body of beings and associated with prana and apana, digest the fourfold food. All right. So if we go back to our example of biochemistry, initially I told you that the first biochemical reaction on the planet is the photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide plus water become glucose. Thereafter, glucose has to be degraded all the way down to carbon dioxide. And see, initially, carbon dioxide and water are at a lower energy level. Because of the sun's energy, they are elevated up to glucose. Glucose has higher energy level. All right. And when glucose is oxidized back into carbon dioxide, that process of oxidation is common to all the aerobic organisms, starting from E. coli, the tiniest of bacteria, all the way to us. That biochemical process of digestion of food is common to all beings. That's what the Lord is saying, that I am the digestive fire that makes digestion of food possible. And this digestion of food will give us the energy to generate, new tissues or new body cells or maintain what we have. So this whole life is basically run because of this biochemical process of digestion. And that process of digestion is common to all living entities. This is called the Vaishvanara. So we know only to eat, and we eat all kinds of food, right? So initially we eat some appetizers, we eat some samosas and kachori and all that. And then we eat some more stuff like rice and pulao and chapatis and paneer and vegetarian, non-vegetarian, whatever. And then the Lord in the stomach is actually digesting it. So once we have finished our meal, then the Lord says, I want to now start digesting it. So he will start digesting it. And as soon as he starts digesting it, we put another kilogram of ice cream on top of that. Then he says, to hell with you. I'm going to make you sick. So that's how we actually douse the digestive fire or the Vaishvanara, or we abuse the Vaishvanara in our own body. See, in Marathi, I've told this before, our prayer is वदनी कवळ घेता नाम घ्या श्रीहरीचे सहज हवन होते नाम घेता फुकाचे जीवन करी जीवित्वा अन्न हे पूर्ण ब्रह्म उदर भरण नो हे जाणीजे यज्ञ कर्म. That is what we say in Marathi. What it says is udara bharana nohe means this is not a process of just filling up your stomach. It is yajna karma. Yajna karma means this Vaishvanara or the digestive fire is the yajna within us, and the food we are offering to it is like an offering. When we eat food in this manner, that is when the Vaishvanara or the Lord will actually digest it well, and he'll say, okay, pranapana samayukta pachamyannam chaturvidam. Pachamyannam means I am digesting it. Chaturvidam means 4 types of food. So the 4 types of food are the ones which we chew, the ones which we swallow, the ones which we drink, and the ones which we lick. So these are the 4 different kinds of food according to Ayurveda. Nowadays, if you say, there are protein, there are carbohydrates, there are fats, and there are minerals. So these are the 4 types of food. We don't digest those. We only eat those. The digestion happens by natural law. That is the Vaishvanara. Okay. Then after that, he says, okay, I've told you I'm in the sun, I'm in the moon, I'm in the fire, I've come down into the vanaspati, into your food, into your stomach. I'm not stopping there. Sarvasya chaham hrudi sannivishto matta smrutir jnanam apohanancha vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyo vedantakrut veda videva chaham. So he says that sarvasya chaham hrudi sannivishto means I am seated in the hearts of all. Sarvasya chaham means I am everywhere. Hrudi sannivishto means within each entity's heart. I am the heart of everything. So the Lord is not only in my stomach, in my belly, but also in my heart. And not just in my heart, but in everybody's heart. So in the Bible, it says the kingdom of heaven is within you. That's what it means, right? Ishavasimidam sarvam, that is what this means. So the entire Vedic wisdom is condensed in the Upanishads. The entire Upanishadic wisdom is condensed in the Gita. The entire wisdom of Gita is condensed in the 15th chapter. And the entire understanding of the 15th chapter is condensed in the 15th verse. So even if we focus on this one verse and meditate upon this and try to understand this fully within ourselves, that also is sufficient. Sarvasya chaham hrudi sannivishto matta smrutir jnanam apohanam cha. So what does that mean? From me are memory, knowledge, as well as their absence. I'll explain to you this in a bit more detail. Matta means I am or from me. Smrutir means memory or the dream experience. See, in our dreams, what happens? Whatever experiences we have gathered during our waking experience, we see them at random. All right. So some memory we will have of a long time ago that will appear in our dreams suddenly sometimes, right? The dreams have no logic really. So sometimes I will be a king in a dream, and the next time I will be a beggar in another dream. So, there is a story about a husband and wife, and this wife tells the husband after waking up, dear, I had a wonderful dream, and in that dream, I saw that we both had gone to a jewelry store and we were looking at all kinds of jewelry, and you were going to buy me this wonderful necklace, which is so expensive. But then my dream got, broken, and then I woke up. So, but then when are you going to get me that necklace? So the husband says, how about in the next dream? So this dream is memory. And then jnanam means the waking experience. As we are talking to each other in our waking experience, this is knowledge. All right. See, this memory is based on our manas, and jnana is based on our buddhi, or it is buddhi pradhan, or it is based on discrimination. So during our waking experience, we don't act the way we would have acted in a dream, right? We will act in a proper manner with wisdom. So this is the waking experience. The third experience is absence of both of these, which is the deep sleep experience. In the deep sleep experience, we remember nothing. See, this deep sleep experience is ahamkar pradhan. Ahamkar pradhan means we still have our sense of identity, but not as our body or anything. Here the ahamkar is like a principle which holds this entire body together. So during our sleep also, the breath is going on, digestion is going on, hair is growing, nails are growing, all these things are happening. So this happens in deep sleep, but in deep sleep, we don't know who we are. We don't know whether we are a man, woman, young, old, rich, poor, nothing. Okay. Deep sleep experience of each one of us is common, because in that deep sleep experience, we connect with our higher nature. So that's why we feel so relaxed after we wake up from a good sleep, is it not? So this is the apohanam cha, or that is forgetfulness. And cha means samadhi state. So most people will not understand it this way, but this is how my teacher or our Swamiji has explained. Cha means samadhi. So even in the samadhi experience, I am the one who is present. Okay, so I am in dream experience, waking experience, sleep experience, as well as the samadhi experience. So once we get up from the sleep, we say, you know, today I had good sleep, but in between I had bad dreams. So how can I, the waker, say this statement or make this statement? Because I, the waker, was not present during dream or deep sleep, isn't it? So the dream experience is separate from the waking experience and the deep sleep experience. In spite of that, once we wake up, we say, okay, I had a good sleep, but I had some bad dreams. So there is something which is more fundamental than the waker or the dreamer or the sleeper. That is me. Okay. That's what the Vedas are asking me to recognize and realize. I am verily that which has to be known in all the Vedas. So all the Vedas declare that the ultimate objective of human life or human existence is to recognize who we are. Vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyo. Recognize who you are. That's what the Lord is telling us. Vedanta krud veda videva chaham. Vedanta krud means the author of the Vedanta or maker of Vedanta, creator of Vedanta. Vedanta means the Upanishads. So I am the creator of Vedantas. And Vedavid evacha aham. Vedavid means the knower of Vedas. So I am also the knower of the Vedas. I am also the creator of the Vedas, and I am also the knower of the Vedas. This is not being said about the Lord. This is our own story. All right. So once we understand ourselves as the ultimate reality, ultimate absolute truth, okay, that's when we get into this experience. In fact, this experience cannot be described. Okay, these words, these verses are only giving us an indication or a direction in which we need to go. All right. So if we recite these verses, if we meditate on these verses, if we try to understand these verses, if we try to experience these verses, this is the ultimate aim of human life. So this is where Gita actually finds its fulfillment, or we find our fulfillment through the Gita. So this is where I'm going to pause now, and I'm going to take questions. We'll take the next verses in the next class, depending upon how much time we've got. So what is the time now? It's 10:12 in my watch. I started at 9:30. So we've got almost 40 minutes into the lecture. So this is a good time to stop. We'll take some questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And let's go ahead with any questions people may have. So Sudhir, oh, before we start the questions from other people, I'm going to answer the question you asked me last time regarding the different types of yogas, right?
Yeah.
So there are 4 types of main yogas. Yogas are basically tools or methods in which to achieve the same objective. I just told you the ultimate objective is to understand who we are, right? To realize or to recognize who we are. Now, this our essential nature is always present. We just don't recognize it. We don't know who we are, right? We have assumed ourselves to be anything but who we are. So to understand this, As long as we consider ourselves to be the body, then we do karma yoga. When we understand ourselves as the jiva, then we do upasana, like bhakti yoga. And once we realize who we are, then we pursue jnana yoga. But in my experience, bhakti, karma, and jnana, they are all together. They are not apart from each other. They are not separate from each other. So a person who is doing karma yoga, his mind will be purified through that karma yoga and through focus. See, I consider even the yoga or Ashtanga yoga as a part of karma yoga, because we are still working on ourselves, our body. Ashtanga yoga is very body oriented, right? So initially we had to do this yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, all of those things. We've done a whole webinar on this yoga, right? So this karma yoga and Ashtanga yoga, they fall under the karma yoga portion of Gita. Then once we start understanding that there is something beyond this body, then that divine principle or the higher principle, more than what our body is, that towards that principle we become reverential. We start thinking of that as Krishna, Rama, Jesus, whatever. Once we start worshipping that principle, then ultimately we start wondering who this Ishvara or the deity I'm worshipping, who is he? Once we start inquiring that, that's when the Jnana Yoga starts. Okay. So now, Sudhir, to answer your question, who's the best guru for this? It depends upon where we are. So if I happen to be in my body consciousness, I seek a guru, or a guru who is going to teach me that will come in my life. All I have to do is to purify myself. See, all of this discussion, everything I'm telling you so far, or I have told you so far, or I'm telling you now, is all nice to hear as far as you are concerned. I'm telling you a nice story. None of this you may have experienced, which is okay. So listening to it first, understanding it, having Shraddha in it, that this is the truth, and then working towards it. That is what each one of you has to do. I cannot do it for you. Okay? So sadhana has to be done by each person on his or her own. If you want to become healthy, I cannot go to the gym. You have to go to the gym, right? So after listening to all this, you can ask me what sadhana. So I told you the sadhana from the knowledge point of view is nirmana moha, jita sanga dosha, adhyatma nitya, vinivritta kama, dvandva vimukta, right? If you are a karma yogi, do seva. If you are a bhakti yogi, do upasana. You do chanting Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. That will bring your mind in focus. You will become focused and you will start wondering who Krishna is. Then you will try to figure out what Krishna consciousness really means. Once you realize that, then you will realize that Krishna consciousness is my essential nature. All right. So you may believe different things, you may understand different things, and you may know different things. And I have no qualms about it. I have no problem with that. I'm completely okay with it. Depending upon where you are in your life, you will find a proper guru who will teach you the next step. All you have to do is to do the homework for wherever you are. All right, so now we'll take questions. Sudhir, anybody who has raised their hands, let's unmute.
Yeah, any question?
Anybody raise their hands? I think I had earlier seen Pragna Ben's hand. So Pragna Ben, can you see Pragna Ben? Pragna Ben, can you please raise your hand once again, and then we will unmute you and you can ask your question, please. Sudhir, can you see Pragna, Pragna? Anyway, until you find her or she raises her hand, let's go to Venkateshwarlu Garu.
Good morning, sir. The basic question I am having is, am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead. Great to see you.
Thank you, sir. This reincarnation is there in Hindus only, there too in Bhagavad Gita. But in Vedas, it seems there is no reincarnation principle. That today I saw a video. That is another part. But other religions, they also claim that Jesus claimed that he is son of God, and Muhammad told he is prophet from God. So same God, three sources. One Bhagavan Swayam, he tells in Bhagavad Gita there is reincarnation, and same God's representative, they say there is no reincarnation. But same one God, two constitutions cannot be there. Some Hindus who believe they will have reincarnation, those who do not believe they cannot have, that cannot be there. How to reconcile these things? That is one thing. Another
Okay.
question also is there. I will see after this one.
All right, good. So thank you for asking this question. This question will arise in our mind only as long as we consider this jiva or the individual soul to be real. See, when we understand that we are only a manifestation of the same divine principle, then you, me, Jesus Christ, and Muhammad, and everything else in this universe is the same principle. It's not apart from each other, right? It's the same thing. It only manifests itself in a different manner. And you see, what is this reincarnation business? Reincarnation business is just an appearance of a different form, isn't it? So no material form is going to last forever. I'm not going to last forever. You are not going to last forever. Nobody is going to last forever in this form. This form will change. But does that mean that life will disappear? No, life is eternal. Even the Bible says life is eternal. Okay, so initially when Jesus Christ was in his body consciousness, he said that I am the Son of Man. That is how we all are, isn't it? When we are in the body consciousness or when we are identified with the body, we say that I am the Son of Man. Then once Jesus himself elevated himself in consciousness, or his consciousness got refined, he started saying that I am the Son of God. So earlier I was the Son of Man, now I am Son of God, so I am a Jiva. Then Mamai Vansho Jiva Loke, you heard that, right? Thereafter, in the end, when he realized who he was, he says, I and the Father are one. Sarvasya Chaham Hrudi Sannivishto. That's what he realized. All right. So in my understanding, what Jesus Christ has taught in the Sermon on the Mount, you should read Matthew, the book of Matthew, chapters 5 through 8, 5, 6, 7, 8. You will see, he says, therefore be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. What does that mean? You realize who you are. Vedaishcha sarvair ahameva vedyo. So there is no difference in that. Okay, so any thought process that separates us from others is essentially erroneous or incorrect. Any thought process that unites all of us, that is the truth. All right, next question. Garo, is
One
this
more.
satisfactory to you? Did you understand this, or do you agree with this?
There is, it's okay. But another thing, one small question. He is the source of that Tejas, Surya Bhagavan or Chandra, whatever it is, and I am the user, or ultimately it is coming on, falling on me, that Surya Tejas. There is no way of requesting the God who is the source of that Tejas. Sir, I am unable to bear this so hot sun in the summer. Why don't you please adjust your temperature a bit, 2 degrees less, so that I will be comfortable. You are, after all, my father, or whatever, you are my caretaker, everything. Tvameva mata pita, like that. But this little adjustment, can you not do? There is no way of requesting him. I cannot put forth. And same thing with Pacham Yannam. Sir, my son or somebody is suffering with gastric problem. Sir, why don't you adjust your digestive Vaisvana Agni a bit more, so that he will be comfortable? There is no way of giving a feedback so that it can be corrected. It is only one way, given and left. There is no way of sending a feedback and requesting it.
All right.
Similarly,
So
other things also.
therefore, yeah, go ahead.
Other things also are like that only. These two, if are answered, the other things also will be answered. Okay,
All
sir.
right. So I will try to answer these questions. So see, as long as we consider the Lord as separate from us, okay, we will keep asking these questions. As long as we see in our Shastras, what does it say? We are completely responsible for our actions, right? So whatever happens in our life is completely and purely and squarely dependent upon what we have done in the past. So if we discover or experience any kind of dis-ease or discomfort or imbalance, we have to try to figure out what we might have done to come into that experience. If we understand the laws of nature, if we see, I explained to you how the sun actually helps us. So if the sun is too warm, the sun is warm for us for a certain period of the year. There's nothing we can do about it. Okay, what we should do, we should sit under a tree in a shade or sit under in the house with our cooler on or air conditioner on, whatever makes you feel comfortable, you stay like that. The same Lord has given us the intelligence to adjust the temperature in our house so that we are more comfortable than out in the sun, right? We have unfortunately cut a lot of trees and forests, so the earth has become warmer than before. But in the last couple of months, nature has tried to restore some balance by keeping us in our houses and shutting down factories and things like that. So from nature's point of view, this is a good thing. From the people who are affected, from their point of view, this might be a challenge. But then this is a time to introspect and try to find out why this is happening. So therefore, if we have come into a situation collectively where the sun is a couple of degrees warmer than it was before, so the average temperature of the earth is a couple of degrees warmer than it used to be 100 years ago, isn't it? It is because of our collective greed. As I have said in the past in my webinars, is we have been so busy creating, producing things without any control on ourselves. Whether we need those things or not, we have not even tried to figure out. So if we understand these laws, see, our problem is we are looking at events in a very narrow window or a narrow band or with a narrow viewpoint. That's why we don't understand the totality of it. So in totality, the world is the way it is. What we need to do is to adjust ourselves, not pray to God. Of course, you can pray to God or whatever, but God doesn't help those who don't help themselves. We must have heard in the childhood, we have heard the saying, right? God helps those who help themselves, right? So we have to first help ourselves and then God will also help us. So that is the answer I feel to your question. Anyway, I'm going to take Samir Supnikar now. Samir, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead, Samir, please.
Yeah, can you hear me, doctor?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, how do Divyangjan reconcile themselves with Bhagavad Gita, and should normal people related to them do whatever it takes to guide Divyang people on the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita? Divyangjan meaning differently
I
abled.
understood. Yeah, I
Yeah,
understood.
and another question is, at the end of the 15th chapter, the Lord Krishna talks about weakness of heart. If it is related to like suffering evil or remaining silent, should we therefore defy evil as per our capability? Your answer, doctor.
All right, so let me first take the Divyanga thing first. Samir, you can go back on mute now. So why is it that some people will be born with some kind of deformity or Nuna, I would say, something less than the normal? So from the individual's point of view, if we consider this jiva to be real, then the way it is explained is such an experience comes into our life. This, I think this question was discussed in one of the previous webinars also. Somebody who was talking to us regarding autism. So of course it is sad that somebody or somebody's child is autistic, but this experience comes to us because of whatever we might have done, not in this life, but in past lives. So as long as we have this awareness or this attachment to individuality, then these experiences will happen, right? Actually, the one who is differently abled or who doesn't have any cognizance the way we have, that person probably doesn't have any awareness that that person is different from others. He probably thinks that everybody else is different from him, isn't it? And as long as that person's basic needs are met, that person is actually happy. That person doesn't have any mental cravings and things like that. The one who is really differently abled, as I understand it, of course, I cannot say that with experience because I don't have that experience. But that is how I would explain that these things happen because of what we have done in the past. And we have to unfortunately go through that experience, during this life. And not only the person who is going through that experience, but also the people around that person who are going through that experience. And we see so many people, even people who we know. One of our friends who was in one of the last webinars, his friend's son happens to be autistic. So challenging. But as I said to him during that time, these challenges we should look at as opportunities for us to grow. That is the answer to the first question. And the second one is, should we not resist evil? And yes, we are resisting evil even without our knowledge, Samir. See, so for example, if I'm healthy, I'm exposed to bacteria and viruses, and my body keeps fighting them even without my knowledge. So the world as a whole, if you look at the whole world as one organism, then evil is fought. It's not that evil is not fought. In the Mahabharata, Kauravas personified evil and Pandavas fought them. Even now, whenever there is some kind of terrorist attack or whatever, the local police or the local law enforcement authorities will fight that evil. We all do that all the time. So yes, we have to fight evil. We have to fight evil consciously, but recognizing that evil resides in all of us. All right, so that evil we have to fight within ourselves also. Whatever evil we have, what is the first and fundamental evil? I have considered myself to be apart from the other. I have considered to be this body separate from everything else. That is the fundamental error. We have to fix that. Once we fix that, once we become more inclusive rather than exclusive, then we can think about these questions or these problems in a completely different manner, and we'll approach them and we address them in that manner. That's what happens by the study of the Gita. All right, Vivek Patil, I see here. I'm going to unmute Vivek Patil. Vivek, can you unmute yourself? Vivek Patil, I see your hand is raised, but I cannot unmute you. You have to unmute yourself. Okay, great. Go ahead, Vivek.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we'll take the next question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you, Vivek. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, the issue is that how to reconcile this divine grace and the self-effort, because there is always confusion that as per the Karma Yoga, we found that the self-effort is the ultimate thing, like as we are responsible for our own destiny, whatever we are responsible. But again, sometime in the Bhagavad Gita, the divine grace is to come. So how to reconcile these two effects? Please comment.
Okay, yeah, great question. So, see, even in Karma Yoga, as long as there is a sense of doership, then the result of that karma will be accrued to us. So if I'm doing something and I have a sense of doership, I am doing that thing, then the result of my action will be attributed to me, right? But in true Karma Yoga or in Nishkama Karma Yoga, the karma is done not with any attitude of doership or a sense of doership, but as a sense of service or an offering to the Lord. All right. So once we do that, then that is what purifies our chitta. All right. So we should keep doing that. And while doing that, you will realize, or I have realized in my experience, that the divine will actually help us in achieving our objective. I experience that all the time. So I keep telling people that our hetu or sankalpa has to be pure. Pure in the sense, I should not have any selfish desire or a selfish motive in doing whatever I'm doing. That is karma yoga. So if I do my profession, do my office work selflessly with the benefit or the interest of the totality or the organization or humanity in mind, then that karma yoga, that effort I make, is aided by the divine. So divine grace will appear and aid us only when we do our duty with a total sense of dedication and inclusiveness, has been my experience. So that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking. I have Galaxy Note 3. I'm going to unmute. Or Galaxy Note 8, I think. Galaxy Note 8. Can you please ask your question?
Yes. नमस्कार डॉक्टर. खूपच छान तुम्ही एक्सप्लेन केलं पुरुषोत्तम
Okay.
योग.
Thank you.
या याच्यावर मी आता एक पेंटिंग करतोय आणि मला त्या पेंटिंगवर म्हणजे तुम्हाला कदाचित माझ्या बॅकग्राऊंडला ते पेंटिंग दिसत असेल.
ओके. काय मला दिसत नाही, तुमचा व्हिडिओ बंद आहे आणि तुम्ही जर हिंदी किंवा इंग्रजीत विचारलं तर बाकीच्या लोकांनाही कळेल. Can I please have your name? कारण की ते Galaxy Note 8 दिसतंय पण I don't know your name.
विवेक पत्के.
Vivek Patki.
PATK.
Great. Wonderful. So if you can ask me in English or Hindi, then other people will also understand.
सर मुझे आपका ये जो एक्सप्लेन किया वो बहुत अच्छा लगा. कुछ सरल लैंग्वेज में था. मैं सिर्फ कुछ जानना चाहता हूँ, इसमें जो एविल इफेक्ट्स है ये अहंकार और अस्मिता के साथ भी जुड़ा हुआ है या और भी सभी मानने चाहिए, षड्रिपु भी मानने चाहिए?
षड्रिपु मानने चाहिए या नहीं चाहिए? षड्रिपु तो मानने
क्या
चाहिए. और
अहंकार और अस्मिता ही माननी चाहिए या षड्रिपु के साथ?
अहंकार और अस्मिता, अहंकार और अस्मिता दोनों जो है ना, वो हमारे अपनी मान्यता पर आधारित हैं कि मैं अन्य से भिन्न हूं. इस मान्यता पर आधारित है. मैंने जब तक अपने आप को अन्य मान लिया है, as long as I have understood or assumed myself to be apart from the other or different from the other, that is called ahamkar. Okay. But once we realize who we are, as long as we are reading chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 14 or up to 12, I would say, we still keep thinking that we are apart from the other. Okay. But when we go beyond that, once we start understanding who we are and once we start practicing what we have learned, then that sense of ahankar actually disappears, is how I have experienced it myself. So the person who has truly understood the message of the scriptures or truly understood what 15th chapter means should theoretically have no ahankar. So until I consider myself to be apart from the other, जब तक मैं अपने आप को अन्य लोगों से या अन्य जीवों से भिन्न मानता हूं, तब तक अहंकार और अस्मिता मुझे परेशान करते रहेंगे और तब तक मुझे ये षड्रिपु जो है, काम, क्रोध, लोभ, मोह, मद, मत्सर, ये सब मुझे परेशान करते रहेंगे. तो इनकी परेशानी से छूटने का जो उपाय है, पहले जब तक मैं अपने आप को शरीर मानता हूं, जब तक मैं अपने आप को देह मानता हूं, तब तक मैं कर्मयोग में मुझे रहना ही पड़ेगा. और उसके बाद कर्मयोग करते करते मेरे चित्त की जब शुद्धि हो जाती है, उसके बाद मैं अपने आप को जीव भाव में देखने लगता हूं. फिर भी मेरा जो अन्यत्व है कि मैं भिन्न हूं, मैं अन्य हूं, वो बना रहता है. जब तक ये मेरा जो भिन्न मुझे जो ऐसा लगता है कि मैं भिन्न हूं या अलग हूं, ये जब तक मेरे मन में है, जब तक मैं इस भावना में हूं, तब तक मुझे मुक्ति नहीं मिलती। देखो, हमें ऐसा लगता है कि मुझे मुक्ति मिलनी चाहिए, मैं हमेशा मुक्त होना चाहूँ। ये जैसे ये जो आपने अहंकार या अस्मिता इसके बारे में कहा, ये भी क्या है कि मैं हमेशा मुक्त रहना चाहता हूँ, मैं आई एम फ्री, आई वांट टू बी फ्री, ऐसा है ना। तो
करेक्ट।
that is the ultimate value in human life. I want to be free, right? Nothing compares with that. I want to be free. ये जो है ना, मुझे मुक्ति नहीं चाहिए, वेदांत कहता है कि मुझसे मुक्ति चाहिए। I don't want the freedom for I, but I want the freedom from I. ये जब मुझसे मुक्ति मिल जाती है ना, तब आदमी जीवन मुक्त होता है। ये है 15वें अध्याय का जो सार है, वो सर्वस्य च अहम हृदय सन्निविष्टो, सब जगह पर मैं ही मैं हूं। अगर सब जगह पर मैं ही मैं हूं, अहम ब्रह्मास्मि, तो अलग है ही कौन? मुझे किस चीज की अस्मिता होगी? किसको मैं दिखाऊंगा? What do you want? What do I want to prove? To whom? And who cares? Isn't it? अगर अन्य कोई है ही नहीं, तो मैं किसे क्या दिखाऊंगा? ज्ञानेश्वर महाराज म्हणतात की क्षेम देऊ गेले तव मीची मी एकली, पाया पडो गेले तव पाऊलची न दिसे. What does that mean? I have gone to God, Vithala, to bow before him. I am bowing before him, but I cannot see his feet. His feet have disappeared. I am the only one there. I have gone to tell him that I am doing well, but when I went there, I discovered there was nobody. I was the only one there. So me and the divine principle had become one. Hey, Advaita झाला होता त्यांचा.
Okay.
All right. So in that experience of Advaita, there is no ahamkar and there is no asmita.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
You are most welcome. So who is the Arun Ambardar? I'm so glad you are here. आज सुबह ही मैंने आपके बारे में सोचा था कि आप कहाँ चले गए, हमने देखा नहीं आपको बहुत दिनों में, तो अच्छा हुआ आप आए। अभी मैं आपको अनम्यूट कर रहा हूँ, आप पूछिए प्लीज। बड़ा अच्छा लगा आपको देख करके।
नमस्कार।
नमस्कार।
पहले तो जो अभी आपने जिस तरह से जो इससे पहले जो एक्सप्लेन किया, बहुत ही अच्छा लगा। वाज लाइक काफी डेप्थ था जो अभी आपने जिस तरह से उसको एक्सप्लेन किया, कि वो वहां जब आप गए तो वो कंप्लीटली इमर्स हो गए, तो ही वाज ओनली देयर, इट वाज बेसिकली अ स्टेट। लेकिन मेरा जो क्वेश्चन है वो अभी थोड़ा एक प्रैक्टिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट में था।
बताइए।
जब हम साधना करते करते आहिस्ता आहिस्ता एक स्टेट आ जाता है, एक इक्वेनामिटी हमें फील होती है, लाइक हर चीज बैलेंस लगने लगती है। और उसके बाद भी बैलेंस करने के बाद भी हम फिर एक अच्छे पाथ पे चलने लगते हैं, हम डूअरशिप आहिस्ता आहिस्ता खत्म होने लगती है। लेकिन उसके बाद अगर फिर वो भक्ति हमारी अपने राष्ट्र को लेके चल पड़ती, इफ माई भक्ति इज टुवर्ड्स माई नेशन नाउ, if my karma is towards my nation now, if my knowledge, even like ज्ञान भी अगर मैं आप सिर्फ अपने देश को लेके जा, नॉलेज भी मुझे उसी डायरेक्शन में लेना है, तो ध्यान अपने राष्ट्र पे कैसे करना?
All right, so अच्छा प्रश्न है आपने जो पूछा वो। The question, I'll translate that in English for people who don't understand Hindi. The question was, initially I do karma yoga thinking that I will help others. Then my consciousness becomes I will do something towards my nation. Then even in devotion, my devotion is towards my nation. But then how do I translate knowledge towards nation? So this nationhood or the concept of nation is only an expansion of our limited consciousness. Okay. If we are in limited consciousness, then we will limit ourselves to first the body, then to the family relations, my mother, father, wife, children, all these relations. Then maybe to my community or my city, then it will be my state, the people who speak my same language, then to my nation, everybody who lives in a certain country, they are my brethren, right? Is that where we stop? What does Vedanta say? Sarvasya chaham, aham brahmasmi. This entire cosmos, in Marathi it says, hey Vishwachi maze ghar, means this whole universe is my house or is my home. Okay? Or we say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is not even limited to just human beings. It's not even nation. See, it goes beyond the nation to all nations, and not just human beings, but all beings. That's what Jnaneshwar Maharaj says in his Pasayadan, Bhuta Paraspare Pado Maitra Jivanse, which means all the beings, all jivas, they may live harmoniously amongst each other. That's what Jnaneshwar Maharaj says. Okay? So once we study the Gita in detail and in depth, and we experience the oneness of everything, then even the nationhood dissolves. So yes, I'm staying in a certain nation, so I should be committed towards that nation and all that. That is all fine, but not at the expense of any other nation. That is how India's consciousness has always been. भारत ने किसी पर कभी आक्रमण स्वयं नहीं किया. अगर किसी ने आक्रमण किया तो उसका हमने प्रतिकार किया, लेकिन हमने किसी पर कभी आक्रमण किया नहीं, क्योंकि हमने आक्रमण करना उचित नहीं समझा. आक्रमण क्यों करें? क्योंकि हमने तो वसुधैव कुटुंबकम ऐसा ही सोचा है हमेशा. हमने किसी को हमारा शत्रु माना ही नहीं. लेकिन अगर किसी और ने हमें अपना शत्रु माना है तो हम उसका प्रतिकार अवश्य करेंगे, और करना ही चाहिए, करना पड़ेगा. तो ये है आपके प्रश्न का उत्तर. अगर आप इसको सही समझते हैं तो अच्छा है, नहीं समझते तो हम दूसरा प्रश्न लेते हैं किसी और से. देखिए, ये मेरे जो उत्तर हैं, ये सारे उत्तर सभी को ठीक लगेंगे या नहीं लगेंगे, इस पर मेरा कोई नियंत्रण नहीं है, और मेरा ऐसा कोई आग्रह भी नहीं है. आपको मेरा प्रश्न, आपका जो प्रश्न है, उसका जो समाधान है ना, वो आपको स्वयं ढूंढना है. मैं तो आपको उत्तर दे सकता हूँ, लेकिन आपका समाधान नहीं कर सकता हूँ. समाधान आपने स्वयं ढूंढना है. So in English, I may answer your questions, but satisfaction or understanding your answer or trying to answer your question, you have to do it yourself. That's how you will be fulfilled. My answer will be only an answer, but unless you feel it from within or you experience it from within, it will not really fulfill you. So we haven't gone up to the ultimate, there are 5 more verses still left in this chapter. So we are going to take those verses. There is one more hand here by Ramesh Reddy.
Before that,
shall I take Ramesh Reddy?
Before that, we have a couple of questions in the group chat.
Yes.
What is the purpose of our life? I mean, this frequently asked question in the webinars.
Okay, so what is the purpose of our life? Can you please mute everybody, Sudhir? The purpose of our life is whatever we want it to be, right? What if there is no purpose of life? The Vedas have declared with great emphasis, Vedaishcha sarvair ahameva vedyo. All the Vedas have declared unanimously that I am the one worthy of knowing. So knowing myself, self-realization is the goal of life, all life. So we go through life, or we go through different life forms or life experiences, only to come to this, where we want to know ourselves. That is the only purpose of life, is to know ourselves. Ramesh, I'm going to unmute you. Please go ahead. Can you unmute yourself? Ramesh Reddy Alawala. I'm trying to unmute you, but it's not working. All right. Anybody else? I think somebody else had raised their hand, but I had
Sudhir,
somehow...
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ramesh, please go ahead.
Yeah. So this you said that biggest evil for us is to know that we are different. So we should accept the fact that we are all same, one and same.
Yes.
But how do we bring that into the real life, day-to-day practices? So can you suggest any guidance to say that we are constantly aware that you and me are same, so that we'll make life more harmony and peaceful for all the people surrounding us?
Great. Wonderful. So thank you for asking this question. I'm delighted you asked me this question, because this is asked by many people. The sadhana I do, I told you in the 15th chapter, the sadhana is given. Nirmana moha, which means do not limit yourself in time, space, and object. Jita Sangha dosha means our error of assuming that I'm apart from the other and therefore desiring things. Jita Sangha dosha, so no cravings, no attachments, no expectations, no complaints. Adhyatma nitya means what we are doing right now, contemplating on the self. Vinivritta kama means going beyond desires. Dvandva vimukta means getting beyond the duality of sukha and dukkha, means when we are in a sukha situation or in a happy space, then not get attached to it. And when we are in a not so happy space, then not crave for the happy space. You know, you do whatever is necessary in whatever space you are in, whatever situation you are in, and not be overly excited about good situations and not be overly perturbed about bad situations. So this is the sadhana. But forget about all this. Before you can understand and start doing any of these things, what I would suggest, what I do or I have done myself and why I can continue to do is do not eat until you are hungry. You do that just one sadhana for 1 week, then see what happens. I keep telling this all the time. See, all of our cravings are because of we don't have any control over our tongue. And if we consume more than necessary, then this habit of overconsumption gets translated and transferred into other things also. So if we limit what we eat, if we eat only when we are hungry, only to satisfy our hunger, then all of our other cravings go down. That has been my experience. That is also told by many masters, including Jnaneshwar Maharaj. He also says that if you control this one organ of knowledge as well as it's jnana or as well as karma, both are possible through this, right? Jnanendriya and karmendriya. Jnanendriya means it tastes and karmendriya means it speaks, right? It's a 2-in-1 indriya, the tongue. So if we can control that, both in eating and both in speaking. So speak only as much as it is necessary, eat only as much as it is necessary. You do it for a week, you will start realizing many things which you haven't realized so far. If you haven't tried that, I would very strongly encourage you to try that. So that is the simplest method to try to understand all these things. That's what I would suggest. So anybody else, you know, somebody had raised their hands and by mistake, I lowered their hand and then they went down in the list and I have no idea who it was. So if you want to ask your question, can you please raise your hand again? I apologize for having lowered your hand. I wanted to unmute you, but by mistake, the button for lower the hand got pressed and then I lost you. I don't even remember your name right now. So unfortunately, I've lost you. If you can raise your hand once again and I will unmute you once again.
Meanwhile, there is one more question. What is Samadhi state? How can we achieve?
Okay, so what is Samadhi state and how can we achieve it? All right, so we had a big seminar or webinar on yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. I would suggest you go back and take a look at that webinar. In that we talked about Samadhi. Samadhi is the last stage in Ashtanga Yoga, which is a state of complete equanimity. And how can you achieve that? See, Samadhi is like the 8th chapati we eat out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That 8th chapati will fulfill us only after we have eaten the first 7. Otherwise, if you eat the 8th chapati first, will not do anything. So that's why we have to go through the entire steps of yoga: yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Then samadhi will happen. So I would suggest you take a look at that earlier webinar, and then if you have any questions, by all means contact me separately and I'll be happy to talk to you about it. So samadhi is possible, but after many steps are taken.
One more question. How will we know when we have got or achieved self-realization, and after that, what is the purpose?
Okay, so this question I think was asked in one of the webinars before also. How do we understand we are self-realized? I should never say I'm self-realized. Okay? As long as I'm in this body, I should continue to do my sadhana. But self-realization is like happiness. You know, if you chase it, it's like a butterfly. As I said earlier, see this butterfly behind me? It is right now sitting on my head, on my shoulder, right? It seems like. So when you don't chase it, if you are still and silent, it will come and sit on your shoulder. But how can I tell you whether you are realized or not? I cannot tell you. Like, you know, you are eating your food, but how can I tell you whether you are full or not? You will yourself know it. All you should do, or all I should do, or all we should be doing is doing our sadhana rather than seeking happiness or seeking samadhi state or self-realization. You see, moksha or mukti or self-realization is not for me, but it is from me. So in the self-realized state, the meditator disappears. Only the experience of meditation remains without the meditator. That is self-realization. That is actual samadhi. Any other question, Sudhir?
No, I think we are done with all the questions.
Great, wonderful. So thank you so much for asking these intriguing questions, thought-provoking questions. Delighted to be here with you again, and I promise to come back next Sunday at the same time, 7 o'clock India, 9:30 US Eastern time, my time. And we'll continue this discussion further. Last 5 verses we will say, and hopefully Gangadhar Garu and his wonderful sons will also come back and recite those 5 verses for us. All right. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and have a wonderful week ahead.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you, Vikramji, for making the complex things to understand the simple terms. I know many times we'll go through these verses and definitions and quotes, but we really don't understand what is the in-depth meaning unless someone gives a explanation in a very subtle manner which we can understand in our wavelength. Thanks for sharing your experiences, and thanks for the participants for joining us today. Thank you all.